All right, and we are live, everybody. Welcome in. This is episode number 100 of the Calibrated live stream. Hold on, let me put my mic down. Hand of applause for everybody. Hand of applause for everybody. Congratulations, everybody, on making it to episode 100 of Calibrated Live. I don't know how you dealt with me and my annoying voice this entire time, but I really do appreciate each and every one of you. And here's to 100 more. So thank you guys so much. Yeah, I'm going to retweet my live stream on Twitter and then we're going to get into it. We have a lot to talk about today. A ton of updates. The situation in Ukraine is deteriorating even faster now. The Russians are now behind Ukrainian defense lines, so the Ukrainians are really struggling to hold anywhere. Obviously, we have a ton to talk about with Lebanon. There is very possibly an Israeli incursion occurring as we speak into southern Lebanon. So the third Lebanon war has officially begun. So we are going to talk about that. We got a lot to get into today. So you know the drill. If you guys are from somewhere unique that you want to call out, go ahead and throw it up in the chat, and I will get to that in just a second. But for right now, I'm just going to go retweet my live stream. All right. Okay, guys. Welcome in. Welcome in. Obviously, as I said earlier, episode 100. It's pretty cool. There are a multitude of things to talk about, so I'm going to just hop right into it. But first, I'm going to do my little intro. Thank you guys so much. I am looking to add an advertiser. So I have found an advertiser, and that advertiser is Beans. So Beans is my advertiser now. You guys will never have to deal with advertising here. I had somebody offer to pay to do advertising on my page, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. Unless it's some ridiculous offer that I basically can't say no to. I'm not really looking to inundate you with a bunch of crap that you don't need. My page is mostly just about information. That's kind of how I like it, so that's how I'm going to keep it. If you guys want more of my content, please go to my Patreon, my Twitter, and my Telegram. All of those links can be found in the description of this YouTube video. I appreciate you all so much. If you are over on Patreon, remember, I've kind of sort of changed the situation on Patreon. All of my content is going to be free. I don't want anything behind a paywall for anybody because I know that there are times in my life when I haven't been able to support creators that I wish that I could see all of their content, and I definitely feel left out. So I'm not going to do that. All of my content will be free. On my Patreon, my demonetized series is now free for all members who, sign up for an account and join my Patreon. If you wish to support me financially there, I really appreciate it so much. This is a ton of work that I put in over here, but it's just from the kindness of your guys' hearts, so I really do appreciate that. Other than that, if you guys have questions that you want answered during the live stream, super chats is the way to do that. I will see them, I will answer them, and as always, there will be usually a general Q&A at the end, so we can also do that. But if I don't get to your question, I am sorry. I can't see them all. All right, let's see. What do we got going on here? Hello from Nigeria, Tennessee, Moscow, North Korea, Detroit, doubt North Korea, New Jersey, and Australia. We got people from all over the world in here again. Thank you guys so much. I'm trying a little bit of a different time slot, just seeing how it kind of works out. I know it's late for my Euro bros and other people around the world, so I really do appreciate you guys being here. And I'm just going to see how this one works. If it works okay, I might do this time, frequently. But if it doesn't, then I'll just go back to probably 2 p.m. my time, which is 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the map. Norway, Quebec, Portland, Oregon, Miami, Denmark. Awesome, guys. Sicily. Awesome. All right, here we go. With the old map. And by the way, for my most recent demonetized video, the audio was apparently off. When I edited it, it didn't sound too bad. I could hear myself talking over the videos, but I will probably play the videos with no sound unless the sound is required from now on that series. So that is something that I wanted to just mention. Okay, up here in the north, Russian forces have pushed in and forced the Ukrainians off of this section of the border here. Not a major advance, but again, this situation is just getting very tight for the Ukrainians. There is likely progress up in this area that has not been recorded yet. As soon as that happens, obviously, I will map it. But the Ukrainian Kursk incursion is still going on. It's still not, benefiting the Ukrainian military in any significant way. And we've seen in the last day two separate trains. We've seen one train on video carrying ammunition in the Sumy region getting struck and cooking off. And then we've also had reports that a second train was struck carrying armored vehicles. So this is the gift that keeps on giving for the Russians. The Ukrainians are just throwing themselves into the salient, which I deem quite pointless. At this point, no military objectives are being achieved through this, and the Ukrainians are just losing a lot of manpower and material on this new front. Again, it is a PR trap. I had made a tweet 5 days ago. I just posted on my Telegram that was basically my dog came in the room. Sorry. That was basically that Zelensky was at the UN, right? He was just at the UN for a number of days in Washington, and there were some very, very bad developments happening on the battlefield. The Kursk incursion continues to be this bad development, but the PR aspect of this war for Ukraine is such that when Zelensky is doing these tours, these begging tours is what I call them, he legitimately will not let the Ukrainian military have any sort of bad look in the time that he is away. This entire Vuhledar situation, the encirclement in Vuhledar, which is now wrapping up, that whole episode was what was caused because of this trip by Zelensky. The order to retreat from Vuhledar was given today. I've been talking about Vuhledar being in a bad situation for weeks. Particularly, we can just go down here and look. It's been in a bad situation for about 5 days now. It is 80% captured. The Ukrainians were never really able to withdraw because the Russians had fire control over the roads leaving. There was half of the city was gone, but the Ukrainians were trying to hold out in this other half. If any groups attempted to leave, I heard reports basically from Russian sources saying groups of 10 sometimes attempt to leave. 3 or 4 will make it to this town up here, Boholavenka. So this is sort of the logistics hub for Vuhledar now that Vadyan has collapsed. The Russians are on approach to it. We will get down to these updates in a minute, but this is the consequences of Zelensky's UN trip. And the very unfortunate part for Ukraine is that UN trip achieved absolutely nothing, right? So Vuhledar, I made a prediction that it's going to be, Vuhledar is going to see a retreat. We just saw that retreat now. This salient right here is going to see a retreat because of how things are developing. This is becoming very, very bad for the Ukrainian armed forces. And I believe we will see a retreat from this section of Toretsk here, as well as probably, so just basically the southern area of Toretsk. And we could potentially see the beginning of the end of the Kursk region. Whether the Ukrainians hold on to it to the bitter end, I'm not sure. It's up in the air. The Ukrainians love to sit in pockets. They love to waste manpower. They love to get these PR victories that end up having further extenuating consequences militarily for the Ukrainian armed forces. They love to do this. They've done it the entire war. I don't get it. I have never understood it. They did it in Mariupol. They did it in Severodonetsk, and Lysychansk. They did it in Soledar and Bakhmut. They did it in Avdiivka. They did it in Krinky. They did it in the Robotny salient. They're doing it in Kursk. I do not understand this methodology. It is going to cause a collapse just because of how, the Ukrainians, in my personal opinion, are in a collapse currently, but it is going to cause like a major collapse where there's no ability to stabilize at all anywhere, because you're just wasting. You're just wasting for no gain anywhere. If you were delaying sufficiently and the ratio was good enough, you could make an argument that the Ukrainians are doing something. But basically, what has happened down here in Vuhledar is that the 72nd brigade that was holding it and which was removed earlier, at least the majority of it, whatever remained of it, was removed. And we just got word that the commander of the 72nd has been reassigned to a separate brigade to preserve combat experience, is what they were quoted as saying. And the 72nd Brigade is being dismissed, which you could probably assume is because it has lost its ability to perform combat missions, right? So, yeah, this is the travesty of the Ukrainian political class dominating military decision for the AFU. All right, no changes in Vovchansk area. Just a small change here south of Peshani. Another fortification was captured in this field right here, but nothing major in the Oskal region. This area is pretty quiet right now with how the south is exploding. All right, nothing in the Chasiv Yar area either. Moving down here to Toretsk. Nelpivka has been completely captured by the Russian armed forces. Again, these were sort of the pockets that I was talking about. There was this pocket here, which was sort of the original pocket just east of New York. That has now closed, potentially gray zone before, so this might not have been a withdrawal, but there are no more Ukrainian forces in this region. So really, you can see how the front line is now. You want to look at it almost like a salient here, but the way I would look at it is like this is almost a different front line from this. So instead of looking at it like that, sort of turn your head a little bit and you can just see how the front line is leveled. The battle is now in the middle of Toretsk and they are now pushing towards Konstantinivka. So don't even worry about this whole chunk down here. It will not hold as soon as New York and Toretsk and Minhorod begin to be threatened. This area will it doesn't serve any purpose after this collapses. All right. Thanks, Scott. Thank you, Iranian Putin. Okay. Now to the Selydove area on the Pokrovsk front. We have begun to see Russian movement in this region, which means that the 3-week fix that the AFU brought in from all over the front, Zaporozhye, Kherson, Kupiansk, some units from the Vuhledar area, all of those units that were brought into the Pokrovsk area have now they stabilized for a couple weeks. They've been degraded, and now the Russians are again on the move in the Pokrovsk direction, which is absolutely crucial and vital for the Ukrainian armed forces for a number of reasons. One, half of Ukraine's steel is produced here. So if this is lost, Ukraine loses 50% of its steel industry, which is 100% of its export industry for sure. And then if they lose Pokrovsk, obviously you can tell by the road connections that this is just a major crossroads. It will lead to everywhere in Ukraine or in eastern Ukraine. Basically, it goes to Vuhledar, goes down to Vuhledar and Velika Novosilka area, and then goes up to Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Izum, all of these areas. So this is the if you want to talk about a potential blossom like we saw around Severodonetsk and Popasnaya back in the day, that's what Pokrovsk will become immediately after. You'll see the Russians start to branch out in every single direction from Pokrovsk. But yeah, so here, north of Selydove, the Russians have advanced along the E50 and through these fields. Once this mine was captured, these fields were basically impossible to hold for the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are now going to withdraw, and I expect that the Russians are going to continue pushing along the E50 towards this roadway, which will cut off logistics to Selydove from Pokrovsk, which is the primary logistics road into the city. There is one to the south, but as you can see here, the Russians are getting very, very close to getting in, small arms range of this road. So travel along it is going to be very difficult. And then over here to the west, there is a supply road that comes into the town. This is the safest supply route. However, if the Russians continue advancing here, they will cut both. But if we go over to the topographical map, you guys can see how Selydove is starting to turn out. So the Russians have just advanced up in this region, right here. They control this high ground, this high ground, this high ground, this high ground, and this high ground. So they control the 4 high grounds around Selydove. They also control this kind of high ground. If you look over here, it's like 650 to 700 feet in this range, and they are looking down into this 460, 450 sort of elevation riverbed. And this is where the Ukrainians are primarily positioned now. This is the last holdout spot right here for the Ukrainians in Selydove. If the Russians advance any more to the north or the south, Selydove is going to be in an incredibly difficult position. Again, we may very well see a Ukrainian retreat from Selydove in the next 2 to 3 weeks. It would be my estimate, depending on how things move. All right, and then to the south of Selydove, the Russian forces have advanced again along the railway. And I'm going to make a small prediction here. You can kind of see this this railway. It runs from Minhorod through Pokrovsk down to the south of Selydove, then down here all the way to Kharkov, and then this is actually the rail line crosses the bridge here. So it just continues right into Kharkov. I think that the Russians are going to be looking at something like this for the next line, the next area that they're trying to push out to. I believe that they are going to push into Minhorod, begin the Battle of Minhorod, and then push out along this entire thing. Hold on, let me move this out of the way real fast. The Russians are going to push out, which you already see here. They have met the railway on this portion, which is sort of similar to the canal, right? The Ukrainian canal here, or the Severodonetsk canal that runs through Chasiv Yar. That is similar to this railway. It is a geographical barrier. I think the Russians are going to try to push the Ukrainians behind it. And if you look, the Ukrainians don't really have a ton of major positions on this side of the railway, right? They have some fortifications here, which they're not going to leave. This is reinforced by Pokrovsk. This part right here is going to take the longest, in my personal opinion, just because it's the largest urban area. Ukrainian logistics are still secure into Pokrovsk. This area is going to take the longest to advance in. But this area down here to the south of Pokrovsk, I think we could see a lot of movement in the direction of Zeleny here. And then as well to the south, once Selydove collapses, or as soon as Selydove is captured, the Russians will probably move for these settlements along the railway. And then this is the pocket right here that I was suggesting that the Ukrainians are going to have to... Oh my God, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I stuck on a topographical map. I am so livid. I am so livid. That is just my fucking stupidity. Fuck. God damn it. Okay, restarting here. To the north of Selydove, the Russians have advanced and captured the E50 highway right here. Yeah, so I'm going to redo all of this. You guys have heard it once. Now you're going to just rehear it again. Congratulations. God damn it, dude. Such an idiot. So stupid. God. All right, here we go. The Russians have advanced along the E50 highway right here through these fields and have approached the north of Selydove. You can see that this is the primary logistics route into Selydove from the north. The Russians are going to try to push out and capture this crossroads. This crossroads is vital for the Ukrainians to maintain logistics into Selydove. The Russians are also pushing from the south here into the southern area of Selydove. There are reports that the Russians have moved into this residential area, potentially capturing this hospital, which would really just close up this pocket and put a lot more pressure on Selydove itself. But yeah, so these are the two advances that I had already talked about. You've already heard them, but now you can see them because my dumbass decided to fix the screen. Here is this rail line that I was talking about. It runs from Minhorod all the way down to Kharkov, crosses the bridge here. This is the area that I expect the Ukrainians to retreat from. Yeah, I am speaking at 2 times speed because I already said it once and I'm tilted. Okay, here we go. So I believe that the Russians are going to continue pushing for this crossroads, most importantly, and along the E50 highway. And I do expect that the Russians are going to push into Minhorod pretty soon here, now that they're through this fortification set, and just start the urban battle. And then the Russians obviously progress very quickly into Minhorod. But this area is where I expect it to be the slowest. Russian movement here will be the slowest because logistics into Pokrovsk is still very, very strong, right? It just got so hot. I got so mad at myself. So Pokrovsk is pretty safe. The urban battle is going to take a long time. This is going to be probably October, November, December, honestly, maybe January. Who knows? It could be a very long time in here. Depends on how healthy the Ukrainian military is. We just don't know. But I do expect that this will be sort of the line of retreat for the Ukrainians. Now that this Ukrainsk and once Selydove is compromised, there will be really no point to sit on this open field area. So I do expect the Ukrainians to retreat behind this railway. And then as we were talking about, I'm not going to make a specific prediction for this pocket here down to the south, but definitely the Ukrainians are probably going to, if they have not already, get behind the Vovocha River here. But as we can see, if the Russians are able to progress along this line here, which does not look like it's going to be particularly difficult to do for the Russians, especially because there is a small river barrier right here as well. So this whole kind of chunk right here is sort of exposed for the Ukrainians. If the Russians can move down into this triangle, they are going to cut off a majority of supply into Khinki through these roads, which is already likely being threatened. We have had reports of assaults into Izmailivka. But if the Russians get down into Novoselidivka here, they will basically cut all logistics into this pocket. The Ukrainians in this pocket are on the clock, guys. Okay. I am so sorry about that 5 minutes of topographical map you guys had to stare at. I need to figure out a way to get my chat up on my screen or something when I'm doing this so I don't make stupid mistakes like that. 100 episodes in, you'd think I'd have it figured out, but no. At least my mic hasn't muted yet, and it's actually been sort of like a 3-day streak, so I just jinxed that as well. Yeah. All right. Center. Cool, calm, collected. All right, let's get into this. Here, just west of Pobieda, the Russians have advanced through the fields. Not a major update, but again, just creating a buffer zone off of this 0532 highway will allow logistics eventually. This area still needs to have a Ukrainian presence forced off of it. All right. Just to the west of Konstantinivka and just to the south of Katarinivka, the Russians have closed, again, sort of this gray zone pocket right here that was created by this advance, and are now assaulting into the southern portions of Katarinivka. So this is, again, another very poor situation, considering that Vuhledar isn't even finished yet, and the Ukrainians are still attempting to move through this region right here. Yeah, so this is the southern offensive that I was talking about. I had made mention of it multiple times, and I told you guys, I said specifically, the second the Russians have access to this 0532 highway and they are able to move up and down from Konstantinivka to Vuhledar, right? This is now a operable road for the Russians. The Ukrainians are not operating anywhere near here. Probably their closest positions are in Antonivka and Katarinivka. So that is what, 5 kilometers away, which means that the road is still in FPV range, but every logistics road near the front line is in FPV range. That's nothing new. But you can see just how much the Russians have progressed off of this highway already. And this is what I said. This area was just so prime for a Russian offensive. The lines down here are incredibly strong, or the line down here is incredibly strong. But that line runs from Konstantinivka to Vuhledar. Once that line broke, once the Russians crossed this Kashalaka River, they were able to really just gain a massive amount of territory down here. I mean, you can see it. It's everything north of this road up here and then all the way up to Konstantinivka. So they've really just closed in the pocket a lot more. And you're going to see something like this when the whole situation stabilizes. You're going to see basically something like this, and the whole front line will now be basically have different rules, right? If you look at this, it makes the whole front change. And this is what Vuhledar is, and this is why Vuhledar is so important. And I'm very, very happy that fall hasn't happened yet, because this was my prediction for the summer offensive by the Russians, and it has come almost perfectly to the place that I was expecting by the beginning of the fall season. The fact that they are on the outside of Mihorod is unbelievable. This was like the most, I expected all of this to happen, this stuff in the south, a lot quicker before the Russians were able to progress all the way to Pokrovsk, just because of how major these cities are and how dense the fortifications are here, right? You were dealing with one line of defense down here, but that one line of defense was so impenetrable for so long that the Russians just exploded out of Ochitny, followed the railway, and made it all the way to Pokrovsk. And if you guys go back and watch that video, I think it's like number 86 or something, you will see almost exactly this map. And one of the predictions I made, let me go ahead and put down this miscellaneous. One of the predictions I made, here we can see it, is almost complete. I mean, again, the fall of Selydove and this pocket right here, which is probably uninhabited by Ukrainian forces. But again, I said right along the Vovocha River here, and that is basically exactly what has transpired. I wish I could see a date on the actual cube when I made it, but I might just go back through my live streams and see when I actually made this prediction. So yeah, this is exactly what I talked about. It has basically happened exactly the way I thought it was going to happen. You look, you can see here where the Ukrainian counterattack happened in Selydove. And I think it's going to continue progressing like this. And this situation is going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse for the Ukrainians as time goes on. All right. All right. Thank you. Congratulations on your 100th, Scott. I love you guys. I appreciate you all so much. I wouldn't have done 100 if it wasn't for you guys. Honestly, like if I would have done like 10 of these videos and they would have never gotten traction and I wouldn't have had an audience and you guys wouldn't have joined like the Kalibrated crew and everything like that, I wouldn't be here doing this. So from the bottom of my heart, I really do appreciate you guys so much. You guys have opened a whole new path for me in my life, and I am unbelievably filled with gratitude. Do it. Do it. All right. I'm going to go over some articles now that we've talked about everything. I think I've talked about all of the advances. The last one, I guess I'll just say, is that the Russians have entered Vuhledar from the west now. Vuhledar is going to be done probably by the end of today. It was already reported that the south had been completely cleared. This is all that remains. The Ukrainians got the retreat already, but it's too late. So Vuhledar is done. You're going to see something like I showed you with the line leveling out here. And then as that line levels out here, you can see how this just becomes a pocket right away. And there's going to likely have to be a general Ukrainian retreat from some of these areas back to Kharkov. So this entire southern front is about to see a giant shift. It's not going to be as many like Russian assaults and a lot of fighting. It's just going to be sort of this ka-chunk, and that's going to stop. And then the Russians are probably going to take an operational pause in the south and potentially focus on places like Selydove, maybe Toretsk, which is looking very close to falling, potentially moving into Chasov Yar in the Stopochki area, or the Oskal River region. I don't think they're. I mean, if the opportunity is here for them to just continue and it's just broken, they're obviously going to keep pushing. But this is a lot of fighting that has transpired here, and these units in this area are probably going to need a rest once this sort of settles. All right, guys. That is it for the map updates. I'm going to go over some articles here. So this is a common thing I hear about the Korean solution, basically, for the Ukraine war. The Korean solution will be, I'll just read some of this. Russia responds to the Korean scenario for the end of the Ukraine war. Moscow has responded to a prediction by Serbian president that the conflict in Ukraine would continue for continue for years, and that its end would be along the lines of the cessation of hostilities in the Korean War. When asked about the war, when asked about the war started by Vladimir Putin, Alexander Vucic told the Serbian outlet Informer that in the end there will be peace, so the fight will be very long for every village, which is not wrong. He is correct. There will be a fight for every village until the Ukrainian army can no longer fight. The Korean scenario will be reached, and it will not have a solution in 10, 20, or 30 years. And it will be the essential solution to the conflict in Ukraine, he added, according to a translation. He provided no further details about his comparison, but the Korean War ended in 1953 with an armistice, but with no peace treaty signed. So, big issues here. Number one, the Ukrainian objective is to join NATO. If there is an active conflict on their border, something like the Korean scenario, unless they openly admit that Russia, those territories belong to Russia, which would be, I mean, this regime could not do that, right? It would have to be the next regime. If that ends up happening, you may see a freeze like this, but I don't think it's going to mimic the Ukraine conflict freeze. I think it's going to be more of just a settled situation where the new Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian people are so tired of war. They're so tired of fighting. They realize that they've been screwed over by the West. They've been used, abused, and abandoned. It's not going to be this, we could go back to war at any time over the next 20, 30, 40 years. Now, the Ukrainian state is going to be awful. It's going to be terrible. There's going to be no economy. There's going to be very few men to go work in the economy. I imagine there's going to be a massive exodus of Ukrainians from Ukraine into Europe seeking different lives. So a Korean solution just really doesn't add up in my mind. And the reason a Korean solution occurred was because the United States went into Korea and we're fighting the Chinese and the Russians, kind of both in the air at least. So the reason why it froze was because the risk of a much wider war between the United States and China was very much there. The United States wanted to nuke China during the Korean conflict. In Ukraine, I don't see how that happens unless the U.S. gets directly involved, which is going to have immediate consequences that will not allow a Korean War solution to come about. So I highly doubt it. I think that the map will look like a Korean solution, but the active war aspect of it, where a peace treaty was never signed, I don't think that's ever going to happen because the Ukrainian regime will just end up being replaced eventually. We're getting to the end of this regime, so. All right, let's see. All right, here we go. So this is just a little analytical update for you guys. Russia to raise defense budget by 25% to highest level on record. Draft documents say that defense and security will make up 40% of government spending as Putin continues his war against Ukraine. I added his because that's usually what they say. Putin continues war. Continues war. That's a weird thing. That's a weird way to say that. Russia is to increase its spending on defense by 25% to its highest on record, as Vladimir Putin vows to continue his war efforts in Ukraine and further escalate his standoff with the West. He's not escalating anything. The latest planned increase in spending will take Russia's defense budget to a record 13.5 trillion rubles, or 109 billion US or euros. If you guys were not aware, that is still like 1/8 of the U.S. military defense spending. So, if you were curious, still nothing. However, in Russia, the money tends to go a little bit further because the U.S. military industrial complex is so bloated and high maintenance. Everybody gets their due legally. And sometimes in Russia, people get their due illegally, but everybody gets their due in the United States. Like the F-35, for example, has different manufacturing facilities in every congressional district on purpose. That just increases expenses. Everything's more expensive. Planes are more expensive. Missiles are more expensive. Everything. As well as the U.S. is not on a war footing. So when Russia produces a Iskander, before the war, the U.S. estimate was about $3 million for an Iskander. Not a chance Iskanders are worth $3 million these days. They're being mass produced. They are everywhere. They are not $3 million a pop anymore. That is not how production works like that. So while the Russian budget is increasing, their costs are coming down, and their military is getting much, much, much stronger, because I'm pretty sure that Vladimir Putin, along with a lot of the other countries in the world, including the United States, are very much so preparing for war. And I think we're going to look at probably basically a decade of war here that is upon us. The list for Diddy got released. Kamala was on it. Awesome. Don't look up my name. I was only invited one time, guys. Let's see. All right, and then this is the last one I have for you guys. Putin nuclear talk shouldn't stop NATO from backing Ukraine. Hey, don't worry about those nukes. Don't worry about a country's nuclear doctrine. Let's just keep doing whatever we want to do, because Europe is on the hook for said project, right? Brussels, September 30th. NATO members should not be deterred from giving more military aid to Ukraine by Vladimir Putin's reckless Russian nuclear. Should not be more reckless. Yeah, Russia's nuclear rhetoric. Outgoing NATO boss, he's a girl boss. Jens Stoltenberg told Reuters in an interview on Monday. Stoltenberg was reacting to a declaration from Putin last week that Russia could use nuclear weapons if it was struck with conventional missiles, and that Moscow would consider any assault on it supported by a nuclear power to be a joint attack. This is a huge deal. Obviously, a green light was given somewhere, and the Russian Federation and Putin basically said, okay, we have to change our nuclear doctrine or we're going to get hit by missiles. And, they did it very short notice. They made a huge deal of it. The messaging was very clear. This is the escalation that Russia is not going to back down from. They cannot allow this. This is literally their Cuban Missile Crisis. This is exactly what this is for Russia. You have Western missiles being placed on a enemy state directly on the border of your country that could deliver nuclear payloads potentially, right? Russia cannot have this. This is an actual Russian red line. Everything else, Abrams was not a Russian red line. Aircraft was not a Russian red line. They said that they would just destroy them when they got there. It wasn't like any big deal. The West made it seem like a red line, that they were being so brave crossing it, but it wasn't. This is a real red line, and the Russians have made it very clear. And what ended up coming out of it? What did Zelensky get from the Biden administration at the UN? The only thing he got was the remaining $8 billion that was left over from the previous budget that would have gone away because there is no Ukraine budget approved by the Congress for 2025. That $8 billion that in military equipment that's going to be delivered to Ukraine is going to be in the same 200 to $300 million packages that we have seen for the past year, basically. It's just enough to keep them in the fight for a little bit longer. That's what this is. It's what it's going to continue to be. And whether Biden or Trump, or Kamala or Trump gets reelected, it doesn't matter, because the Ukraine project is fundamentally over just from a demographic standpoint, right? The Russians are rolling, the Ukrainians are retreating. That's the situation. They cannot stabilize. They do not have the manpower. All of the military equipment in the world will not change the scenario. You cannot train pilots fast enough. You cannot train infantry fast enough. You cannot train crews for tanks, anything fast enough. You don't have the crews to even train. It's over. And the last option they had was to go up that last ladder on the escalation ladder, that last rung on the escalation ladder. And that was allowing Western missile strikes into Russia proper. The Russians said absolutely not, and it looks like the West has listened. Will that last? I don't know. This is very desperate times. So desperate, in fact, that the United States is funding and approving of a wider regional war in the Middle East because of how desperate their situation is. They're playing the strategic ambiguity game. Did the sound go out? Somebody said sound. I hope the sound didn't go out. Let me know. The West has said the entire time, we want a ceasefire in Gaza. We want a ceasefire in Lebanon. Okay, thank you guys. We want this, we want that. And then the whole time they keep delivering billions of dollars of military aid to Israel. They keep sending more military to Israel to protect it, aircraft carriers, stuff like that. Guys, I hear this a lot, and it makes very little sense to me. The whole, Israel controls the United States. Ridiculous. Ridiculous sentiment. It's ridiculous. If you look at how the U.S. has played this, it is the exact fucking way they played Ukraine. It's deplorable, honestly, because it's not even like we're making promises. We are lying just through our teeth, just lying to get things done, lying to deceive, and then backstabbing on top of those lies. If you look at what Hezbollah has said, and if you look at what Iran has said, they both basically were under the assumption that they were going to get some sort of agreement from the United States about a ceasefire in Gaza, which, let me remind everybody, that Hezbollah and Iran would not be in conflict with Israel right now if Israel would not have committed genocide in Gaza, right? That is the reason for the conflict in the north right now. I mean, the Israelis want the conflict for a different reason. Benjamin needs it to stay in power, but Hezbollah is doing their entire year-long operation in support of Gaza. They have not been killing civilians. They've only been striking military targets. And, you would think after watching Ukraine for 2 years and dealing with the West for decades, you might not trust us. You might understand that we are going to do everything to maintain our hegemony. And if you're not on the list right now, you're next on the list. That's how this works. If you're not the Palestinians, you're Hezbollah. If you're not Hezbollah, Iran is next, right? They should know this by now. This is a cliche at this point by the United States. Iran basically said that they were promised that if they did not retaliate for the assassination of the Hamas lead negotiator in Tehran, there would be a ceasefire and major sanction reduction on Iran. I don't know what the hell they were thinking. The new president obviously needed to learn a lesson, and that lesson came with the serious command loss of Hezbollah. You sat on your hands. You just let the US do whatever they wanted again. You let Israel do whatever they wanted again, and you pay the price for it. I hope you learned the lesson. This is the situation at hand. And it's weird for me to talk about this because it sounds like I'm like angry at my own country. I am a little bit, because this is not how I want to be represented around the world. I don't want, when you think of Americans, to think of backstabbing, lying pieces of shit. That's not what I want you to think of. When you think of Americans, I want you to think of, the World War II-esque idea of America. It doesn't exist anymore. It sucks. And it needs to change. It needs to go back. But don't ever think that Israel is in control of the United States. The United States is pushing their foreign policy through Israel, a proxy, just like we did with Ukraine. Except Israel is actually important to the United States because Israel is our forward operating base. And a huge percentage of the American population actually cares about Israel for no good reason. Right? So that's sort of the situation here. If you look at the last 10 years in Ukraine, we had a coup, which was a Western-backed coup in Ukraine. That was the initial destabilization in the region, right? They blamed Russia for going into Crimea to secure their Black Sea Fleet headquarters, which the United States would have done the exact same thing if it was Norfolk or anything like that, right? You can't take that away. It's existential to the Russian position, right? And they knew that. They did it on purpose. Crimea was successful, but they used it to sanction Russia. They used it to continue their foreign policy. Minsk 1, a complete joke, openly admitted to just buy time for Ukraine to arm. Minsk 2, the exact same. And then in 2022, what ended up happening? The Ukrainians were setting to go on the offensive, and the Russians invaded in February, in the middle of the muddy season, in late February, in the middle of the muddy season, or at the beginning of it. The absolute worst time to invade Ukraine with a small force that, again, you would think after Minsk 1 and Minsk 2, the Russians may have learned their lesson about dealing with the West. But what ended up happening in Istanbul? Same fucking thing. What happened to Joe Biden saying, if we send tanks to Ukraine, it's going to be a war with Russia? They went back on that as well. They're going to go back on every single thing that they promise, that we promise. We just don't follow through with anything like that, especially if it is, if it detracts from our goals, our objectives. We're not going to play that game. So Ukraine, Israel, they're one and the same. Taiwan is going to be the exact same thing. And if you think it's going to be any different, get your head out of the sand. You're no different than the Iranians. Russia was not doing well in the beginning of the SMO. What huge adjustments did Russia make? This is a common misconception. The Russians were doing very well in the beginning of the SMO. They destroyed the entire original Ukrainian army within the first couple of months. Immediately coming into the summer months, the West had to deliver all of that Soviet crap from Europe. They were pumping it in. So the Russians actually did very well. They went in with 180,000 men. They captured about 20% of the country in that time. In totality, I don't count Kiev and Sumy because those weren't really controlled areas. They just controlled the roads for the most part and the city of Sumy itself. The Russians went in with a certain expectation of what was going to happen. They did not think that the Ukrainians were going to literally destroy their own society, their own culture, their own country for the West. They did not think that that was the plan. They did not think that that was going to be the goal. Istanbul should have been the absolute extent of this conflict. It should never have started. The government should have never been couped in 2014, if you want to go all the way back. But the Russians went in with a very small force. They achieved amazing success and basically had the Ukrainians prepared to capitulate to Russian terms in Istanbul. But then Boris Johnson came in and said, no, you can't do that. So the Russians really didn't do that bad in the beginning. It was a limited operation, an SMO, to achieve a specific result. It was not to capture all of Ukraine. It was not to force Ukraine to surrender. That was never the objectives. You can't do that with 180,000 men. It's not realistic. The deal in Istanbul was the best deal Ukraine was going to get. The deal Putin offered in May of this year, the 4 blasts and so on, that was the best deal that Ukraine could have taken most recently. Now, there's no deal on the table. So, yeah. Let's see. Is the media already memory holding the F-16s? Yeah, they don't even talk about it anymore. I don't even know if the Ukraine has F-16s after the multiple Kinjal strikes we've seen. We know they already lost one, so there have been 3 separate serious Kinjal strikes that have claimed F-16 destruction. We haven't got any pilot obituaries or anything, but you know, this is the you're not going to spread the news around a lot like they did last time. That was such a bad look for them. What response do you think Iran will give? Okay, well, this is actually good. Get me back on topic here. So what we're looking at right now is the Israeli government, the IDF, have moved 5 brigades to the border with Lebanon. We've seen days of strikes trying to degrade Hezbollah's capabilities as well as decapitation strikes. And now there is a ton of action on the border. I haven't actually checked my phone for the last couple of minutes, but last I heard, the Israelis had begun limited operations into southern Lebanon. This is exactly what Hezbollah wants. Hezbollah wants the fight to come to them. They cannot win a fight with standoff weapons. You know, the Israelis have F-35s. They're just dropping JDAMs on everything. You can't. It's hard to win a war like that. They need the Israelis to come in. It looks like the Israelis are going to do that. And this is where Hezbollah is going to have the most level playing field, I would say. They're going to give up territory. The Israelis are going to look like they're having a ton of success initially, just like in Gaza, right? And then as they get in and as their logistics lines start to get extended and as the hits start coming in, things are going to slow down and it's going to turn into this grind fest again, probably. Unless Hezbollah has lost all of their combat capability, which I highly doubt, this is probably what you're going to see. And hopefully we get a repeat of 2006, where the Israelis are pushed back and Benjamin Netanyahu is removed from office and we can go about our lives. If not, we could see a rapid escalation into a much wider regional war involving Iran. If Iran gets involved, the United States is going to get involved, and we will see a U.S. war with Iran. And I have been predicting for over 2 years now that this election cycle, the United States itself would be in a military conflict somewhere in the war before the election. I thought the goal was to get Biden reelected, but it's not. It's to get Kamala reelected. In fact, it's probably if I had to make a guess, I would say we are going to see some major event happen in the United States or somewhere involving the United States that the U.S. is going to use as a casus belli for a war in the Middle East. I think it's where we're at now. It's been my prediction. I'm going to stand by it. And I think that over the month of October, you're going to see this battle with Hezbollah be carried out. It's going to turn into this awful slugfest. It's going to be very apparent that the IDF is not going to be able to win this fight, and the U.S. is going to have to step in one way or another. I think this is exactly where we're going. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's a prediction. There's no conspiracy here. I mean, you could say, if I said false flag or something, you know, they did it to themselves. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think there's just going to be this general escalation. U.S. bases are currently being hit. The Camp Victory in Baghdad just received a rocket barrage. So there's going to be some casus belli that is not going to be something that significant, but the U.S. is going to use it, because that's just how escalatory measures in the Middle East are going to work, right? At a certain point, something's going to get hit that has strategic value to both the United States and Israel, and that is going to be the jump-off point. So that's what I personally believe. You guys are more than welcome to disagree with me. I could be absolutely wrong, but have I been wrong so far? It's a little cocky, I know, but I'm kind of on a roll lately. So I'm going to stick with my guns. All right, if you guys have questions, go ahead and get some questions in. That takes us to 54 minutes. So I am wrapped up with all of my chit chat. If you guys have questions, go ahead and get some questions in. I've been sick for the past few days. I will say, though, getting getting to view a live stream of yours in person is very special to me. Awesome, man. Um, why aren't you able to normally watch them? I'm just curious. Is it just because of the timing? Yeah, let me know. Why won't Russia and China pledge to defend Iran? Because why would they do that? It doesn't make a lot of sense. You don't want to extend yourself. You don't want to make commitments that you might not want to keep. You know, what if Iran develops a nuke and nukes Israel, and Russia's like, "Hey, we defend Iran through and through," and then that happens, right? It's risky. You have to be very careful with these sort of things. What if Iran decides, "Hey, we're going to get into war with the United States," and then Russia's like, "Oh, well, we have a security agreement with you. If you do that, we're going to have to go to war, and that's going to be a nuclear war." Same goes for China. They will support Iran. They are supporting Iran. Russia's sending military equipment, and I'm sure China is delivering whatever they need as well, right? So there's no point in doing that. There's no point in committing yourself to something that you can do without the commitment. You could say behind closed doors, "Hey, if this gets out of hand, we're going to back you up." But you don't have to make that public. You maintain strategic ambiguity. Scott, your bald head looks wonderful. I love you, man. Suit org on top. Suit bros in control. All right, man. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Are you asking me to wear a suit? I have a suit and it's too small for me now. Like my thighs are too big and my chest is too big now. It doesn't fit. When I move into the new room, which should happen soon, I almost have it set up. It was a mess, so I had to clean it all out and everything, and I'm just kind of taking my time with it because my new mic and my new audio thing isn't here. So when it does get here, I will end up moving, and then maybe I'll throw on a suit. Who knows? Get all prepped. So will there be a 9/11 type event to trigger American involvement? I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. And I wouldn't doubt that the American people would be so stupid and so shocked to believe it. I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. But I think that there's also going to be a ton more questioning of the whole situation now that people are more in tune with conspiracy theory and they're understanding more about the deep state and stuff like that. I think that a lot more people will be like, jet fuel can't melt steel beam sort of deal in the future. Right away, instantly. What happened to the DU ship to Ukraine? Depleted uranium, for those of you who don't know. Most of it was destroyed in that explosion in that ammunition depot in the West, the huge one that we saw in 2022 or 2023, I can't remember. I'm sure that was most of the depleted uranium ammunition because we never really saw it being used, I don't think. Chat about the Volvychansk attack, the MTLB thing. I'm not actually sure what you're referring to with the MTLB thing. If we go over here, though, I can show you the situation of Volvychansk. I talked about it in my last live stream. But basically this area has been in the gray zone for me the entire war, especially the aggregate plant. It doesn't exist anymore. If you go look at a video, this entire area is like flat, and then there's like one half building that's still kind of like standing here. But this entire place is like gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So it's basically like an open field from here to here. With a little bit of rubble, sort of like a Marinka where you can hide in like little basements that haven't been completely collapsed yet and stuff like that. But this has just been a war zone for months, and this has been the front line the entire time. It's gone. And the Ukrainians did a large counterattack here to force the Russians out of this position. It ended up succeeding. They dropped a lot of bombs on this region. And then the Ukrainians in this region got hit by a bunch of FAB 3000s and basically retreated, and now it's a gray zone. So I don't know what the MTLB thing is. It might be a video I just have not seen yet. But yeah, that's sort of the situation in Volvychansk. Pezeshkian, who is the president of Iran, said he stopped missiles to Russia. True. I think this is just the strategic ambiguity and the plausible deniability aspect of this. Also, the whole Russians received Iranian missiles is again a Western line that they have been saying for a very long time. They've been saying this for a very, very, very long time that that Iran was going to give Russia drones. Over 2 years, they've been saying this, right? The second they gave them drones, it was, everybody thought that missiles were just going to be the next thing. Never ended up happening. So Russia and Iran have both denied that they send missiles or that they received or sent missiles. But who knows? Who knows? I don't think Russia needs those missiles, right? It's not like an area where they're suffering greatly. They have glide munitions that cover almost 100-kilometer range now. They have ballistic missiles. They have, guided MLRS systems. So there's not a huge need for Russia to acquire missiles unless they're really low. But that's not how it looks from the Iskander use lately. And that's not how it sounds from the Western claims about Russian production of missiles. So yeah, I just don't think that it's really even anything that you have to pay attention to. It is possible that they denied. Maybe they were hoping to get that sanction relief from the West. They said, hey, if you don't give Russia missiles and you don't strike Israel, since you're the new Iranian president, we can make a deal with you. And he was like, hey, I'll be the greatest Iranian president ever if I get restrictions and a ceasefire in Gaza. Lie. Gotcha, bitch. Will they do a JFK on Trump and blame Iran? They have twice already. They've tried twice. So, yeah, we're waiting for it. That would be the perfect thing, right? Even Trump has said that there are Iranian hit squads looking for him currently, which you're just setting yourself up there. I don't know if it was the Biden administration. I think it was the Biden administration. May have been. I don't know who puts this forward, but there is a law going forward, basically, and it's a contingency plan in case a massive amount of Congress, like 100 members of Congress are killed or something all at one time. They won't have elections, basically. It's like this 1984, end of the Roman Republic sort of situation going on that they're talking about getting prepared for in the coming months or something like that. Weird time to be doing it. Also, you got to remember that fear is just this thing that is constantly being used because humans are so susceptible to being scared, right, about things. So you just got to be very careful about what you read and the information you take in. Wait and see, because a lot of the stories, a lot of the headlines you read are actual nothing burgers that have no basis in reality. Okay, let's see. How's the Francis Scott Key Bridge going? Last I heard, they still haven't got it fixed. So your guess is as good as mine, homie. Do you think Mediozonia casualty ratios are accurate? Probably for Ukraine or for Russia. Yeah. What is it? They're saying something like 70 to 100,000, something like that. I think that's very accurate for 2.5 years of large scale industrial warfare like we've seen. I think that's very realistic. I think the Ukrainian casualties are astronomical, which is crazy because I didn't used to think that, but now I'm starting to think that from how we've seen the front line progress. How is the U.S. media so blind to Ukrainian defeat? They're not blind to it. They see it. They write articles about it every now and then. They see it. It's there in front of them. It's not the narrative. They're making a choice to ignore it. They're not blind to it. They're ignoring it. There's a very key difference there. You talk a lot of collapsing of the AFU. However, I imagine a collapse more like the Russians did in 23 towards Izium. Why isn't it like that? Because the Ukrainians aren't retreating. The reason why there was a collapse around Izium is because the Russians pulled the hell out. They didn't fight. It happened in 10 days. The Russians were holding the line until they could get out and they had rear guard to protect their retreat. That's what the Russians did. It wasn't a collapse in the same way as the Ukrainians are collapsing now. See, the Ukrainians are trying to hold everything and they can't hold anything. That's the issue. The Russians made a decision. They said, this is a losing fight. We don't need this territory. It's not worth sacrificing all of our manpower right now to hold this area. We'll get it back eventually. We're just going to pull back. The same thing they did in Kherson, pull back and let the Ukrainians move into the area, bomb them while they're coming in, degrade them, and you know, space for time, sort of the situation. You can't call it a collapse because I guess the lines did technically collapse. The Russians weren't ready for it, this, that, and the other. It is a collapse, but the territory, the massive amount of territory that was captured because of a willing Russian retreat from the area to conserve and then fight back at a different date, at a different place, at a different time, right? That's sort of the situation. That was sort of the situation. Technically, it was a collapse. I'm not trying to say that at all. But in terms of seeing that by the Ukrainians, you're not going to see that until the Ukrainian military basically ceases to exist. The fact that they're losing Vuhledar, they're progressing towards Pokrovsk, Selydove is being encircled, Hrinki, the whole Vovocha River area is in a encirclement. The fact that the Russians have crossed the canal outside of Kleshchivka, the fact that Toretsk is falling, the fact that the Kursk incursion is failing, you know, all of those things, the progress in the Oskol region, all of those things are the collapse. It's like a German collapse, right? It's not a collapse as in we're in a retreat and we're going to fight later. It's a collapse like we're going to hold everything. We're going to get encircled. We're going to lose huge chunks of our army here, here, and here. But we're never going to give up an inch without a fight. So the collapse is the fact that we're not seeing the 2023 movement of 100 meters here, 100 meters there, 20 meters up here, 15 meters over here. No, now we're seeing kilometers taken in single events, right? Vuhledar, you're going to see a massive push out in that southern quarter of the map. That is the collapse I'm talking about. When you're losing places like Avdiivka or Chitny, when you're losing whole defense lines like east of Pokrovsk, when you're losing fortress cities like Toretsk, and you're encircled in them, that's the collapse, guys. Right? The Germans still fought till 1945. They were in Berlin, right? The Volkssturm were in Berlin holding the streets for as long as they could. The Germans never collapsed, but they were collapsing the whole way back to Berlin. No, that's the idea, and it's going to get worse. And eventually, there will be a Kharkov-like collapse by the Ukrainians, and like I said, that's going to happen when there are no Ukrainians left in front of the Russians. Scott, your take on Israel is awful. That's what I think about your opinion. Israel is strategic liability, not an asset for the U.S. Read John Mearsheimer's Israel lobby. If it was a strategic liability, no, it's not a strategic liability. That makes no goddamn sense. It makes no goddamn sense. The strategic liability is losing Israel. That's the strategic liability. It's a forward operating base for the U.S. to extend its geostrategic influence in the Middle East. It gives us a reason to be there. It gives us a reason to send aircraft carriers there whenever we want. We can fly planes in there whenever we want, and we don't have to worry about green zones like in Iraq, and we don't have to worry about all this crap. It is fundamental to U.S. hegemony that Israel survives. So no, my take on Israel is not bad, and I do agree with John Mearsheimer on a lot of things. It's not awful. Israel does not control the United States. Israel kind of controls the United States in that Bibi might not be following exactly what the United States wants him to do, but it's sort of like two coaches on the same team. Think about a football team, like a American football team. You have an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator, and a head coach, right? The head coach is Washington, right? But you're on defense right now, and that defensive coordinator is going to be making a majority of the calls. That's Israel. Israel's the defensive coordinator, right? They're the ones that are making the calls on the front. They do things potentially without full what would you say, full permission. The U.S. hasn't given them full permission to do certain things. I don't think that that is honestly the case, even though I think that they're actually quite in line with each other's foreign policy and they're doing things hand in hand. The U.S. knew that the general secretary of Hezbollah was going to be assassinated a week before it happened. And they spent a week talking about a 21-day ceasefire with Hezbollah. They are liars. They are liars, and they are going right along with whatever Israel wants. If they wanted it to stop, they would stop delivering bombs, right? If it was a liability, they would control it. But they won't, because that's exactly what they want. They're desperate, and a regional war is a really, 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 really good thing for Kamala right before an election. That's it. I've been saying it for 2 years. We have no base in Israel, Qatar at our forward. Oh, please, bro. Okay, we don't have a base in Israel, but the IDF bombs whoever we tell them to bomb. Bro, come on. They're our F-35s. They're our JDAMs. We probably, I don't know if we trained Israeli pilots. I actually don't know that. They might have their own training program, but I'm sure we established it. Right? What the hell are we talking about here? Yes, no, the largest lobby is not AIPAC. It is not the largest lobby. The military-industrial complex is far greater and more powerful than AIPAC, for sure. AIPAC is an important lobby. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Israel doesn't have some kind of control over our domestic politics, but the tail does not wag the dog here, people. You guys are ridiculous. Israel is the U.S. base. There we go. Thank you, Iranian Putin. See, he gets it. It is. It is literally exactly what it is. They do everything we want them to do. They were striking Syria, right? They do whatever we want. They are our power projection in the region. They do whatever they want too. And sometimes those things might not mesh, but that doesn't mean that the goal isn't the same, right? Two heads pulling in different directions, but they both want the same goal. Such a shitty take. Oh, well. Hey, my recommendation for you is go start your own YouTube channel, and I'll have you on once your YouTube channel gets big, and then we can have a discussion about your shitty take. Okay? My shitty takes have been right, so I'll stick with my shitty takes for now. Thought about UA war and elections in DE and AT. Okay, I might just be retarded, but I don't know what DE and AT are supposed to stand for. And elections in... Let me know what this is. I want to know what that is, because I want to answer that question, please. Let's see. I see parallels in this war to the U.S. Civil War. The Confederates keep fighting to the bitter end, even though they are essentially lost after Gettysburg. Yeah, I think World War II is a much better example. But more realistically, I think the proper analogy here is going to be South Vietnam. I think South Vietnam is the perfect application for this scenario that we have in Ukraine. You have a government that was installed by the United States. It was very bad. It was much worse than the original government, not liked at all. And the entire time, what you're about to see, I mean, remember, Vietnam lasted for years, but what you might see is a regime change and then another regime change and sort of this constant instability in the political sphere in South Vietnam. And eventually, it's going to end the same way. I would not be surprised if we see airplanes flying out of Kiev International Airport and helicopters and stuff like that. I will not be surprised if we see that exact same scenario play out, just like we saw in Afghanistan. The exact same. I would not doubt it at all. I appreciate your question, though, or your comment. Let's see. Did that NGS? Did you get back to me, man? I'm curious as to your. Oh yeah. Wait, no. NGS said AMK mapping. Oh, elections in Germany and Australia. Oh, okay. 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 Sorry. Um. Let's see. Thoughts about UA war and elections in. Okay. Austria, not Australia. Um, Elections in Germany at this point, I don't know what Europe's going to do because they are really on the edge of a hard turn to the right, and you know I think that they're just going to try to lock down control. I think I'm really under the impression that we are going to be in a global conflict of some sort here very soon that will basically allow all of the countries to halt their elections. We may see these elections. I don't know what time this is actually exactly going to happen. It feels like it's going to be before the elections, but I don't know. That kind of prediction is just pointless because so many different variables are at play. Um, but I do think that you are going to see the far right become more popular just because they're just telling the people what they want to hear at the moment. Um, in terms of how the war will affect it, um, I think I think the current European leadership understands how bad the situation is for them. They endorsed this whole thing. But future leaders, if they come in and they have a different approach, perhaps. I don't know if it's possible to even win an election in Europe and have a different approach, but if you overturn governments and things change, you could see a lot less funding to Ukraine, and that's going to be very bad because Europe is now basically their sole partner for military funding and financial backing. The Green Zone seems prime for a false flag. Yep, I fully agree. I think that I don't know if it's going to be a false flag. It might just be a natural escalation. It might not have to be a false flag. If U.S. bases are to be targeted in the Middle East in the event of a larger escalation between Israel and Iran, I don't think there's any choice for Iran but to strike certain bases and to prevent, destruction that would come out of those bases towards their countries. So I don't know, but it is definitely a possibility. Question: Are we going to see any large encirclements in Ukraine, considering how many pockets there are? Large encirclements. I don't think that there are enough troops concentrated in any given area right now to see large encirclements. At the most, you may see 1,000 throughout this war. That's huge. I think that would be huge if you saw 1,000 people get surrounded and surrender or fight to the death or anything like that. Anything bigger than that, I very much doubt it. Like you're not going to see Army Group South get surrounded. That's not what's going to play out. Uh, does this even matter? I mean, what? She's an idiot. Well, who cares if she's Indian, black, white? Who gives a shit? She's literally mentally challenged. Who cares about her genealogy? I mean, she's a liar. We all know she's a liar. We all know that she's claimed to be Indian for her entire career. So, I mean, this is kind of goes without saying, right? I don't know exactly what she was lying about. Was she lying about her African heritage or her um, Jamaican heritage or whatever, her Caribbean heritage? If that's the case, I mean, it just goes exactly what I've been saying the entire time. She's just a vessel. She's empty. She's very light up here, and she's good at following direction. So, why am I bald? Genetics, high testosterone, probably some mix of the two. And I shave my head. I could have hair. I have hair right here. It's just receding a little bit right here, so I just shave it because I like to be bald a little bit more. Good question. Do you think do you think Israel might invade other Arab states like Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, like they did in the Six-Day War? Not if they don't come at them. I don't think. Eventually, they might. Like I said, if you're not on the list now, you're going to be on the list eventually. Especially if the U.S. hegemony gets stronger. they're going to start knocking places off of the map, right? So, which I don't think is going to happen, but no, I don't think you're going to see them go after Jordan, especially. Jordan's helping. Egypt, I doubt it. Saudi Arabia, no. And then, no, I don't think so. I think it's just going to be Syria, Iran, and Lebanon. No more being bald. I was going to be bald, and I just said no and didn't get bald. I can just squeeze really hard like Play-Doh, and it comes out my head. But I only have a limited number of those, so I got to be careful about how I use them. If I have like a date or something, I might pop it out and do a nice hairdo. All right, guys, that takes us to an hour and 20 minutes. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for all of your super chat questions. If you guys wouldn't mind giving this video a like, a comment, click that thumbs up button. Obviously, that's a like. Click that bell, that ring-a-ding for notifications. I appreciate you guys so much. Go check out my Patreon, my Twitter, and my Telegram for more content. Guys, have an amazing day. Thank you for the awesome live stream. Close to 8,000 viewers today. That is awesome for our live stream live viewers. That's really, really cool. I appreciate you guys so much, and take care. You know, have an amazing week. Turn the day around for somebody else. Give a compliment. The best thing you can do to somebody is be like, hey man, I like your shoes. Bro, especially guys, we never get compliments. That makes somebody's whole year a little bit better. So do that today for somebody else. Okay? Take care. Goodbye.